What is up YouTube, I'm Royal, I'm rank 1 in Wild Rift, and this is my tier list for patch 5.0. There have been some massive changes to the game, with the minions being different, with XP being different. We have a new champion, Syndra, and we also have a rework champion, Aurelion Sol. So let's get straight into my tier list. Quite a lot has changed, but quite a lot has also stayed the same. Starting off with the anticipated mid lane tier list. We have a new god tier champion, and that's Syndra. I personally believe Syndra is very overtuned right now. I'm expecting to see some nerfs in the upcoming patches. She's going to be joined by Yone and Jace, who have been god tier for quite a long time now. All the S tier champions are again very strong. Fizz is actually one of the best counters to Syndra. For those of you that have been watching my streams, you've seen me demolish some Syndras with Fizz. And you've also seen me demolish other champions with Syndra. The A tier champions are still very strong. A lot of the scaling champions are a little weaker right now, like Kassadin, because it takes longer to get to those XP power spikes. So a lot of the scaling champions have fallen off, Vladimir being one of them. Zyra received quite a few nerfs, so she's fallen off a little bit. However, I think she's still a decent pick. Aurelion Sol, my thoughts real quickly. He's actually a pretty decent champion. He's just very weak in the early and mid game and takes a long time to scale. And like I said, because of the XP changes, scaling champions have kind of fallen off. The reworked Ziggs from last patch is, I think, slightly worse than the previous iteration of Ziggs. However, he's of similar strength. Moving on to jungle, we're going to have again Lee Sin and Kha'Zix as our god tier champions. Every champion in S tier is really strong, extremely strong. Just Lee Sin and Kha'Zix are a little stronger than them. Lee Sin saw some changes, however, I think overall he might have even been a buff. Like, he looks really strong in my games. But the changes were not massive, they were just on his ulti. He got a little lower base damage, a little more damage to tanks. The A tier champions in the jungle, all of them are really strong. So I would mostly focus on playing God, S, and A tier champions. All of them are pretty strong and viable if you play them correctly. The B tier champions is kind of the rest of the junglers that are okay. You can play them if you want to. However, they're not as strong as the others. And C tier I would stay away from, as I think they're fairly weak. Moving on to Marksman, we of course have Ezreal and Varus as our God tier. Ezreal is pretty hard to play. However, Varus is quite easy. So if you just want to play a really strong champion as ADC, I recommend Varus. I think the patch has benefited Misfortune and Draven quite a bit. So they're going to make their way into S tier. And of course, our long-range ADCs, Caitlyn and Tristana, continue to be pretty dominant as well. Kai'Sa continues to be pretty dominant. In the A tier, we have all the other viable and still pretty good ADCs. B tier, our champions I don't really recommend. I think Corki is better off in the mid lane, and if you want to go an AP option, you should probably go AP Varus or Ziggs. C tier champions are quite weak. Senna is not a great ADC, and she's better as a support with a farming champion. So she's pretty weak as like a normal ADC, right? Moving on to the supports. We have Nautilus and Pyke as our god tier champions. I think that this patch has benefited melee supports the most. However, Karma and Yuumi continue to be S tier. However, the rest of the supports are mostly engage pick supports like Nautilus, Pyke, Thresh, Leona. Braum would be higher, however, he's just a very weak blind pick. He's only good when you counter pick melee supports with him. So he's A tier. Lulu is of course a very strong option. Senna is actually a great option this patch if you have the right team comp for her. She's just a very unique champion that you can't always pick. Sona has kind of fallen off after the slight nerfs and the meta changes. And yeah, Malphite is not a real support, but I've put him in the tier list because I've seen a lot of you comment about how broken Malphite support is. So he'll be in C tier. Moving on to the top lane. The top lane is very interesting because all of the champions that have in S tier, 7 champions, all of them are extremely strong this patch. I could easily have all these 7 champions in God tier as well, but kind of defeats the purpose of putting 7 champions in God tier. But all of these 7 champions are really strong. Quick thoughts on the new items. I think they're a little overrated. I don't think Heartsteel is that good. I don't think Titanic Hydra is good at all. However, for a couple of champions, it's definitely benefited them. And that's Mundo, who's joined the A tier, and Sion, who's also joined the A tier. All of the other champions, not many changes. Garen dropped off a little bit because I don't think he can just compete with the S tier champions anymore. A lot of these champions that you see in B tier can be good depending on the matchup. Champions like Yone in A tier, Yasuo in B tier, Irelia or Riven, depending on the matchup, these champions can be higher. The issue is they struggle way too much versus the S tier champions. That's why they're rated a little lower. So that will be it for my tier list. Thank you so much for watching, and go ahead and comment below who you think is the strongest champion in this patch.